Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Welcome to Turning Point with Patrice Williams.
We can be whatever we dream.
Enhance the way you think about successful entrepreneurship, empowerment, and politics to live your best life.
Fulfill the highest, truest expression of yourself.
And now your host, the authentic, impactful influencer and coalition builder, Patrice Williams.
Let's go!
Let's go. I tell you, that intro still has not gotten old. It's been about a month. I'm in the background. I absolutely love it. I love this show. I love spending this time with you all. My name is Patrice Williams, and I am your host of Turning Point. And today I have one of my friends. She has become a good friend, Cassandra James. And what I love about her is she's funny. She's funny and serious at the same time. She's always bringing this, she informs me. Knowing her, I'm always learning something new. But what's really cool about her is her background in housing. And so I thought she was perfect to come on this month. We are talking about disparities and equity and how to make an impact in our community. And I just thought she would be perfect. I know she's perfect. So let me bring her on. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to see you.
It's good seeing you too.
Did you hear what I said? I said, you are so funny.
I know. Well, you said funny and serious at the same time.
You are, because it just depends on when that mood hits. So you might say something real funny, but then that next sentence, you're super serious. I'm like, oh, she's saying something real serious now. But I want the community to get to know you too. Do you mind if I take a moment to read your bio?
No, this is my morning affirmation. So,
okay, let's do it. Cassandra James is a community development specialist for the city and county of San Francisco, and her specific focus is on housing assistance through a racial equity lens. Some of the highlights of her advocacy include serving as the San Francisco Youth Commissioner, advisor for San Francisco Transitional Age Youth Initiative, and a community liaison to the African American Community Relations Board. Professionally, Cassandra has held many positions from program coordinator at the Center of Young Women's Development, which is now the Young Women's Freedom Center, and was instrumental in the Tri-County, San Francisco, Alameda, and Contra Costa collaboration on trends of system-impacted women, crisis intervention specialist at the Family Violence Law Center, where she received a domestic violence counselor certificate and a support services counselor at Community Housing Partnership, assisting formerly houseless individuals and families maintain their homes. Presently, she serves as a board co-director of New Leaders Council, Oakland chapter, board member for Community Resource Initiative, member of the League of Women Voters, Solano County chapter, member of Black Women Organized for Political Action, Solano Napa chapter, BWAPA. She is currently a fellow with Emerge California and ran for CA Assembly Districts 14, running on a platform of equity, transparency, and progress. Cassandra was born and raised in San Francisco, Ohlone land, and for the last 9 years has been residing in Vallejo, the Patwin tribal lands. Since moving to Vallejo, she settled in District 2 and has given birth to 2 boys, a 6-year-old and a 9-month-old. Since having her sons, she has been increasingly involved in Vallejo, Solano County to ensure the community becomes what they deserve. Cassandra holds 3 associate degrees from the City College of San Francisco, an AA in Arts and Humanities, an AA in Social Justice, and an AS in Behavioral Science, and is currently pursuing an accelerated bachelor to master's public policy degree at Mills College. I'm just going to let that sit for a minute. If you watch the show, you know when I just be quiet, when we just drop in. You don't talk over a bio like that. We got to let it sit. That bio is fire. And I really shouldn't say the bio. It's you. You are fire.
No, thank you. So that's why I'm like, it's my morning affirmation, because especially in the pandemic, where we are often just going and we're in survival mode, where we forget the contributions that we make to the community. So it was my reminder that I'm more than a mama. And
you are more than a mama.
Yes.
If you forget, you text me and I'll tell you. Put it on a recording and you just play it back.
Yes.
Because you are so much more than a mama. You when I first read your bio, you were anchored in San Francisco, and you've done so much in San Francisco. And when I read the bio, I'm like, we need her to be anchored here. So in your bio, you did that pivot and you're like, look, this is what I'm doing here. And then it made me smile, because then I realized all the connection points that we have. You are a member of BWAPA. I founded the Solano Napa chapter of BWAPA. You are a recent, you just was accepted in Emerge. I am a graduate of Emerge. And I also see that you are a member of the Women's League. That is one of my favorite groups as well. And I just re-upped my membership. I was like, I'm paring back. I don't need to be a member of a gazillion things. But I just renewed my membership, because they are just doing so much amazing work. And I just refuse to not be a part of organizations that are doing really amazing work. And so we're doing a lot of things in parallel. I love it.
Yes.
Well, so the reason why you're here today is because of your background in housing. And I remember talking to you for the first time, and you were in understanding your background and where you worked. And I was thinking, you know what? If there is an area in Northern California that is going to be the most innovative when we're talking about housing and our houseless, that is going to be San Francisco. And you're sitting in the thick of things there. And I was wondering, and I know we have a presentation that we're going to queue up, but I wanted you to be here because I was like, what can we be doing better? How should we be thinking out of the box as far as housing, not only in Vallejo, but Fairfield and Benicia and Suisun City and Vacaville, just all of Solano County? How can we do better?
Right.
So you're here to tell us how we could do better.
Yeah, and one of the things that we can do better is if we look at these policies through a racial equity lens, and not just a racial equity lens, but through BIPOC. Black, Indigenous, and then people of color. When you were reading the bio, you notice that I put Ohlone land and Patwin tribal lands, because we have to recognize the land that we do stand on. America was founded on we often talk about the original sin of slavery, but we need to address that there were people here, that their lands were taken from them, and then they were given pockets of land. And then we want to rename it San Francisco. We want to rename it Vallejo, Viejo, after General Vallejo. We want to rename Fairfield. But there were tribes that were here first. So we want to, for us to move forward and us being innovative in the way that we think about housing, think about land use, think about planning, we need to acknowledge the Ohlone land that we stand on. That's where I was born. We need to acknowledge the Patwin tribal land, which Solano County is on. And then how can we not only hold them or honor them, but also move forward to making sure that all communities are safely housed. And not just safely housed, but not rent burden either. And when I say rent burden, meaning not paying more than 30% of their income on rent, and then not really having enough left for other things that we need to hold us up as a foundation.
Whew. Okay, so I remember one of the first times I spoke to you, you said your name, you said your pronouns, and you said what land you, and I said, how do I find out okay, we're all over Solano County. I'm in Fairfield. How do I find out what land I'm on so I can give credit?
There is an organization that is in Oakland, actually. It's called Greenlighting Institute. And that was to address or attack redlining that was happening, particularly in Black communities. And they have like a Rolodex, I'll say, or index of the tribal lands within the immediate Bay Area. And those things are important. And I remember I was saying, my name is Cassandra James. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I identify as Black. So it's okay to say that Black girl that is from here or there. We need to acknowledge these are our intersections of where we stand. So, and by intersections, I'm meaning that as for me, I identify as a Black cis woman. So there are two main systems that I stand that may, I don't want to say oppress, but I may have more barriers accessing power, which is the patriarchal system because I am a woman, and also the system of racism because of my skin color. And that comes into play when we do address the structural, institutional institutions where, such as housing, where we have to negate where I have to negate these identities. So my intersectionality of it is I'm having to deal with these. And just imagine if I was a trans Black woman. So then that's another level of intersection where they have to then negate.
So we would say that our cis is I am a woman. I would say Patrice Williams, and I would say for me, she, her, hers, and that I would say my cis. No, I identify as a Black woman.
Yes.
Okay, and I need to say that anytime I introduce myself.
Anytime, because you never know who's in your audience who may need to feel included or who may need to feel heard and have not.
I love it. Okay, did I write Greenlighting Institute? Did I catch that right?
Yes, it's Greenlighting Institute.
They do amazing work.
Yes, they do. And they have fellowships too. And I encourage all young folks, particularly in Solano County, to go and do those fellowships because you could bring those learned skills back to home and put them, implement those plans.
So before we go on, the other cool thing, so audience, do you see why I love this lady so much? Did she just inform us? So I've also caught you where you were giving African American Black history fun facts. And so I asked you, would you do that for us today?
Yes. So a fun fact is, I like to stick to Bay Area Black fun facts, is in San Francisco during the internment camp, when Japanese communities were in the internment camp, it was Black families that were staying in their homes during that time. And when they came back, Black families relinquished their properties back to them as a placeholder. So a lot of folks don't know that's why Japantown is next to Fillmore, which is also known as the Harlem of the West. So the Harlem of the West, meaning it was a predominantly Black community in San Francisco that's housed next to Japantown.
So when the Japanese community came back, Black people said, "Here is your property back."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. And they did not say, "You're going to have to find someplace else because now this is my house and I love it. And I've had a son."
Right.
That's
They
dope.
were all within that one community.
That's dope. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Do you have another one, or that's the one you're dropping on us today?
That's the one I'll be dropping on you today.
You know what? So what you
back, and I'll drop another one.
Okay.
Yes.
But what I want people to do is you need to find Cassandra James on Facebook and friend her. She is an incredible human being. She's so much fun, and you need to know her, follow her, friend her. Oh, I see Tamari Richardson. She is amazing.
Well, thank you, Tamari.
And she's also saying that that's great information. We have to acknowledge that the Native Americans were the first ones that lived here. And thank you for Cassandra. You are brilliant.
Well, thank you.
I agree. Okay. We have a presentation. You want me to cue that up?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's more or less not a presentation. I just want to be inclusive to folks who are visual learners versus audio learners, because I know I'm a kinetic learner. I need to get down and dirty in order to learn something new.
Me too. So that's why I was really appreciative. Wonderful. Okay, the first slide.
Okay.
And just to cue this up properly, what we're talking about is equity in housing.
Yes. Which is important, especially today, because we have the opportunity to reset America's housing policy. America never created housing equally for folks to live in freely. We instituted or implemented policies that purposely segregated communities and left communities and held communities back from accessing power, the buying power, and also the cost of living and the amount that they are worth, or their housing is worth.
Right. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was trying to make it bigger for us, and I kind of messed that up. Sorry. Okay.
No, it's perfectly fine. Because what the coronavirus did was highlighted the disparities that's happening within America, within various institutions. So we talk about like education, talking about job placement, talking about income inequities, and housing is at the core of it.
Right.
So what has happened recently is the Federal Consolidated Appropriations Act. They call it 2021, although it was passed in December 2020. And this established an emergency rental assistance program. The reason for this was because folks lost their jobs. They were unable to pay bills. And we know in California and within the Bay Area particularly, that houselessness is a big issue, because we could barely, our cost of living has outgrown, or our cost of living has outgrown our income, especially within our BIPOC communities. So what this has done, so what happened was they created an emergency rental assistance program where $25 billion will be dedicated towards rental assistance, and $2.6 billion will be given to California, and 1.1 billion will be allocated to counties with populations over 200,000 individuals. So Solano County will be considered one of those counties to get that funding.
Absolutely, we're over 400,000.
Mm-hmm. And then just to shift over to California, they just passed and signed last month, January 2021, Senate Bill or SB 91, where it extends key tenant and property owner protection provisions that was provided by AB 3088. So AB 30, the Assembly Bill 3088, what that did was protect tenants from being evicted. So that's shifted the 3-day notice to 15-day notice. Then they provided forms and documents for folks to fill out to prevent them from being evicted, because they're saying my income was impacted due to COVID. And then also with SB 91, the state will pay 80% of unpaid rent. I can't remember the month specifically, as long as the property owner will forgive the remaining 20%. But the clause in that is the property owner could say, no, I don't want the 80%. So the state will then just pay the 25%, and then the individual or family would need to move.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And
that would be a problem, because where would they move to? Is this a housing market right now?
There is a housing market, but how can you afford it if you don't have any income? So the best case scenario is the landlord will say, yes, I will take 80%, and I'll forgive the remaining 20%.
And this is only a look back and past.
I can't remember the month specifically, but I believe, and don't quote me on this, it will be from September 2020, and it was extended to June 2021.
This will be a good relief for people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then locally, what that means is I'm more familiar with San Francisco County, which is a little bit more, I don't want to say a little bit more, they're more vocal with the way that they are using these state laws, using SB 91. But locally with Solano County, what I found is that they aligned with the state provisions. So the eviction moratorium is extended to June 30th. The 3-day notice was extended to a 15-day notice. And again, the state will pay the 80% of the unpaid rent if property manager or the owner forgives the remaining 20%. So that's how it impacts Solano County or the Bay Area in general. And according to Solano County, if cities within Solano County want to take it a step further, they can look at these laws and see what will be more conducive to their community members within that particular city.
Awesome. Awesome. And do you know if there's an ability for the county to step in, and are there any gaps that maybe the county needs to step in possibly and help with?
Yes. So the county, when they receive the funds, a lot of the counties have not received the funds yet. So they're in the planning process of this. I would encourage the county to look at this through a racial equity lens. What communities were most impacted by COVID? What communities were struggling prior to COVID with being rent burdened, with at risk of losing housing or being houseless? They need to, once these programs or once they receive the funding, there need to be programs with that racial equity lens. So that way there will be equitable distribution throughout the county and the Bay Area.
Awesome. I love it.
And it's particularly important. Like if you go to the next slide, Solano County will receive federal dollars. And it's a breakdown. In Solano County have about 447,000 folks that live here. And as you can see, there's a chart there that breaks it down based on race. And then at the bottom, and this is a draft, and this is an estimate allocation that Solano County will receive directly from the federal dollars of $13 million. And then from the state, they could receive an additional 14 million and change. So they have the room to direct these funds in a way that where it could be equitable amongst the communities.
So I know that we're waiting for a census updates.
Mm-hmm.
Are these numbers based on 2010 census, or are we waiting for the data from 2020 census?
So we are waiting for the new census. So these numbers can change as in population size because the census information has not come out yet.
And is the point of us looking at the breakdown of communities by demographics, is it by race and ethnic groups? Is the point of doing that is to make sure that it's an equal allocation, and really thinking about, okay, how do I reach out to, we have 3,911 Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. How do we reach out to that specific community? So is that the reason why we have this breakdown, so that we can outreach properly?
So the breakdown usually, like in San Francisco, when we look at the breakdown, we look not only at the breakdown of certain populations, but then we see what is impacting those populations. So, for example, in San Francisco, there is a 3 to 5% Black population. But if you have 70% that is in your local jail, and then you have another 35% that may be houseless, versus your population who identify as white, non-Hispanic, where you have like a 50% population, because I don't know that number off the top of my head, but only 1% is in jail, and then you have 3% that may be houseless, then we need to make sure that we create that safety net for the community that will be most at risk. So whenever we look at policy, I always will look at the breakdown of race. Who's in your community? Who may need it the most? And because I'm not in Solano County, I don't have those in-depth numbers, but I do have, I have this chart that just breaks down of who lives here. Your community is made of who and what.
Right, right. This is awesome. So we have a lot of money coming down the pike here.
Yes.
Almost 27 million.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's just, how will it be creatively used or innovatively used to make sure that all communities receive some of that equitably?
Yes.
And then on the next slide, this comes from Rent is Eating Up a Dangerous Share of Californians' Pay. So I copied in or screenshotted Solano County here. And if anybody wants this map, will be more than willing to email it to you. So this will break down who is paying more than 30% of their income by zip code. So if you see the darker orange means that they're paying more than 30%. The lighter orange means that they're paying less than 30%, like the yellow, 20%, etc. So you see, like one of our communities, I believe it's Rio Vista, is in that dark orange, meaning that they pay a good portion of their income to rent. So how can we make
very dark there?
Mm-hmm. And even some parts.
Rio Vista, I believe, has a lot of our seniors are there.
Yes. And how do you expect, and for a lot of our seniors who may be retired or receiving Social Security, VA, we know that like the average amount for that is between like $972 to about $1,100. But if the average rent in Solano County, or median rent in Solano County, is like $1,682, then you're not only having to pay all of your income, then you may need to ask family members or get a part-time job or something else to make up that income in order for you to stay safely housed.
Right. Right. Oh boy. And then I also see a darker area in an area of Fairfield. It almost looks like the middle of Fairfield, although I can't tell for sure. And I see a darker wedge here at the lower half of Vallejo going into Benicia.
Yes. And we can, again, like we can explore the map because they do break it down by zip code. And that's why it was important to highlight who is living in your communities, that breakdown versus who is living in those dark orange to darker orange areas.
Right.
And so if I didn't have time to really look into that, but if you would look at it, I would assume like Vallejo is one of your diverse cities within Solano County.
It is.
So Vallejo is darker than, say, a city like Vacaville, which is more white residents that live in Vacaville. So how can we make sure that Vallejo has a safety net for its community to make sure that their community stays housed?
You know, the key, I love this map, by the way. I'm a visual person too, so I love this. But I tell you what I've forgotten, you know, I knew this before I lived in California, but we are supposed to be only spending 30% of our income on rent. And I've never done that here in Solano County, in California.
Right.
I've never done that. So thank you for like bringing that back to consciousness. That's what we're supposed to be spending. And we're almost always on the edge of not making ends meet when we're so off kiltered and how much we're spending in rent.
And even throughout like the Bay Area regionally, if you are tracking the trends, you will see that Black and brown folks are moving from those coastal cities like San Francisco, like myself, and Oakland, and we're moving more inland to Antioch, which is in Contra Costa County, Pittsburgh, Vallejo, Fairfield, Solano County. So these are supposed to be like the last affordable housing within the Bay Area, yet it's still not affordable for folks, to where folks now have to commute. Again, like myself, I will commute to San Francisco to go to work because that's where I could earn a decent income. But that also goes back to the Bay Area's history of racism, especially towards the Black community, because certain communities didn't want Black folks living there. And I know that's a different conversation, and we can have that at a later time. But I do want to highlight that. I will say, for example, Richmond. Richmond had they have the railroad factory, or the war, when the war was happening, they had the factories there. So it created migrants from the South, Black migrants from the South, to do the entry level, not even entry level, meaning the minimal jobs. So they weren't getting paid as much as white counterparts because of the jobs they were doing, and also because of race. So when the Ford factory, Ford was one of the factories there. So when they had the opportunity to move to Milpitas, policies were implemented to prevent Black folks from buying houses there. So now the only place Black folks could buy houses was not only place, but they were only able to live within certain projects that within Richmond. So now they had to commute from Richmond to Milpitas to keep their job, their pension, etc., and then go back home. And some folks, I will share a book that I think is very eye-opening when it comes to housing policies. So now they had to commute, and some folks even had to work there for more than 20 years just to buy a home in Richmond.
What's the name of the book?
The name of the book is, what's the name of the book? The Color of Law. A forgotten history of how our government segregated America. And they highlight the San Francisco Bay Area because we're seen as liberal, although we are conservative when it comes to our housing policies.
So I met the author.
Oh, Richard Rothstein.
And he doesn't do a lot of events, but I drove to Berkeley after I read that book and had him sign it. That book is everything.
Yes. That book, and it breaks down just how our policies the policies that we've created and implemented have kept Black and brown folks from accessing wealth. We talk about generational wealth, we talk about generational trauma, et cetera, but it comes from the policies that were enacted during that time, but even now. So that's why we have an opportunity now to correct some of those wrongs.
So it's Color of Law, A Forgotten History, and then I didn't get the rest.
A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America by Richard Rothstein. Or Rothstein.
Yeah, I think it's... Charles Pomaris is on. He's a commissioner, and he said that's a great book.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening. We should see, especially now that we are doing a lot of virtual work, we should see if we could get him virtually, because I tell you, before the pandemic, he was booked a whole year in advance, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was booked in advance, and he doesn't like to email. He had his whole organization that you would have to book through him. Yeah, you had to buy books in advance. He spends like this huge amount of time, not working, just in his own space. I think it's 3 to 6 months out of the year. So I don't know. Let's see.
Yes. But it breaks down like the language that we use. So when we say projects, when we say ghettos, when we say housing developments, projects came from a housing project because they needed to house some of these folks coming from the South. And again, it wasn't equitable, where they created housing for their white workers and also let them expand on like rooms, so that way they can rent to these workers, etc., versus Black folks, where they created a housing project and it was located near the railroad. So oftentimes you had I don't want to say multi-generational, you had a lot of families living within one housing project because it was close to the work, but that was the only housing that was available.
I love it. Thank you for that. And thank you for giving us a resource that we could all look at.
Yeah, and that's what the last slide is just resources. I don't know if anyone may be behind on rent and or mortgage as well, because oftentimes we say rent assistance, but rental assistance, we also need to change the language for mortgage assistance as well. There is an organization, Catholic Social Services of Solano County. They are a partner of Season of Sharing. And Season of Sharing is within the 9 Bay Area counties. And they often partner with community partners to distribute money to families and individuals. You have to meet the criteria for back rental assistance.
Well, I tell you, Catholic Social Services of Solano County, actually, I think it's Solano and Yolo counties, but they do amazing work. They rolled out the rental assistance program in Solano County. I understand that they have their rental assistance processes are really strong, and I love that they made your resource list. Yeah. And I don't want people to feel nervous about utilizing these resources. Do it.
Yes. And it should be normalized. So nobody should feel shame for reaching out and accessing these resources, giving it to families, and just having them walk through the process. And the other 3, they are just more or less for information. So,
okay.
The Legal Services of Northern California and Housing is Key. They provide more information on tenant protections and also property owner protections, small property owner protections, because oftentimes when we say landlord, property owners, we're thinking of big corporations, and not all time. And it's not all big corporations. We do have small property owners. And lastly, is Housing First Vallejo, and that is a coalition of various housing organizers within Solano County that do meet, and they discuss the houselessness and housing within Solano County.
Yes, I believe they meet. And you said Housing First Vallejo. Is it Housing First Solano?
Yeah, Housing First Solano. I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh no, it's okay. And I believe they meet monthly. They have an agenda. You can go online and request their meeting minutes, and it's an open Zoom meeting these days, and it is so informative.
Yes,
it's so informative.
Especially, they are bringing the navigation centers out here in Vallejo, and I've worked at the navigation centers in San Francisco. I think we have like 5 or 6, and they just opened up 2 more. One specifically for TAY youth, and TAY means transitional age youth between the ages of 18 to 24. And then there's another one. I can't remember what it's for. They just opened one in Bayview, Hunters Point, and that's where like I grew up, and that's one of their last Black communities in San Francisco. So the navigation centers are trying to be more focused on certain communities, because again, like what I was saying at the beginning, our intersectionality is different. If I'm receiving services from someone that looks like me versus someone who may be an ally. We appreciate our allies. However, it's a difference when someone who look like me, who may have gone through some of the struggles or may understand the language that I'm speaking, is at the helm of providing those services.
This has been really informative. What I learned new is that that it's not just rental assistance, but it's mortgage assistance. Mm-hmm. I know there are so many homeowners that are nervous, they're in trouble, and they're nervous. So that is really wonderful. So when they're putting together, so that number, a few presentations forward, so many millions of dollars, that will be for rental assistance and mortgage assistance.
So it just depends on how they are going to structure it. Again, it's still like under being developed right now. So I know like in San Francisco, one of like my program, we do rental and mortgage assistance. And also it's available to our undocumented community as well. So our community without paperwork. Because some of our funds are philanthropy dollars, and then some of them are federal dollars. And we know that those that are connected to federal dollars don't extend to our whole community, meaning our communities without paperwork versus our philanthropy dollars. So those are the ways that we can be innovative in making sure that we capture the entire community and making sure that all communities stay housed.
Right. Whew. Well, you've given us a lot to think about. This has been really, really informative. And I'm really excited. I'm just taking it down so it doesn't take up my screen. But this has been awesome. This has been awesome. This has been so wonderful. And the chat is quiet, but I think it's one of those presentations where we're just taking it all in. Learning more, taking it in. If people want to reach out to you, can they? We've already done the call to action that they need to Google search you and find you and on Facebook and friend you. Is that the best way to reach out to you, or should we be handing out your home number?
You can hand out my home number, or feel free to email me as well. I'm more than open and willing to have ongoing conversations about how does this look, particularly for our BIPOC community. Because again, we know that our Latinx community and our Black community and our Indigenous communities are the ones that are being most impacted by the pandemic, not only because of health inequities, income inequities, etc., but also because of housing as well. we knew that in December, majority of folks that lost their jobs were women of color, Black and brown women of color, because we are the ones that do those journey level positions that were cut at first. So the service workers, grocery workers, etc.
Okay, I am putting your email address in the chat. Oh, hello, Doris Pandora. Doris is our, did I get your email address right?
C. James Mills. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Doris Panduro is our new city councilwoman in Fairfield. She is my emerged sister, soon to be yours.
I'm like, okay.
And she is doing amazing work in Fairfield. She is one of the reasons why we should be electing community-led, community-focused people.
And I'm glad that you said that, because housing correlates to politics. Depending on who's in your community is who's going to vote for your representative. So when we have our communities that are active and are engaged and not worried about losing housing, they could be more engaged in voting, more engaged in the political process. And we need folks that do look like us in those seats and who could speak the language to our communities and also to officials while they're creating these policies that impact us. So it all is a full circle. I know how we look at housing as one component, but housing is the foundation, like how we were talking about earlier, the census. The housing is the foundation of creating that community that we all deserve. And it's at the foundation of all these inequities, because housing dictates the school you go to, housing dictates the type of job you may get, housing dictates where you may commute or how you may be engaged in the political process. And if you don't have anyone at the seat or at the table who doesn't understand what it means to be at risk of eviction, or who doesn't understand that they have to choose between paying rent and eating, then how will they ever be able to create the policies that you need in order for you to have a thriving livelihood versus just struggling in it?
No, I agree. I agree. And especially, just using Doris as an example, she was a part of different unsheltered, that's not the right term, unhoused community. She's done some volunteer work with that. She's done volunteer work with the Matt Garcia organization. So she's very youth guided. So she brings this amazing lens. And that's what we see. That's what we see what happens when community-led folks get on these government boards. So I am really thrilled. So Charles is talking to you through the chat.
Yes. Hi, Charles. I would love to connect.
Charles is one of our new commissioners. I don't remember what board. Charles, you're going to have to put which board, because I'm going to make something up. I feel like it's Economic Vitality Commission in Vallejo. That's what I feel like, but I could be absolutely wrong just because I just know a lot of folk. So good. I love to see these connections happening. And is there any final word that you want to give us?
Oh, he's on the planning commission. So, regardless of whatever our passion may be, we need to lead it with the equity lens. Understanding that we are correct. This is the time for us to correct the wrongs that were implemented prior to us. And we're receiving this, although we're receiving our generational curses, but we're also receiving our generational knowledge and wealth, and knowing that we can pivot and change the course of history if we implement this within a racial equity lens.
So it's that time. So no matter, are you saying that no matter what we're involved with, whether it's through schools, whether, at work or our neighborhood association, we should be looking at everything through the lens of equity and correcting?
No, we need to be looking at it through a racial equity lens, because if we look at the data through these various systems or these various institutes, we know who is not doing the best. We know that it's Black folks who are over criminalized and in jail. We know that it's brown folks who comes second. We know that it's Black folks who are discriminated when it comes to housing, where they're not being shown as many properties, and they're only being shifted or directed to certain communities. The same with our Latinx community, same with our indigenous community. So we know that these things happen, and even in education, there's a digital divide. So we know that this happens within each of our institutes. So when we are moving forward, we need to make sure that we have, if I'm going to be writing a policy, if I'm going to be creating a new zoning code, like Charles said, I need to be doing it through a racial equity lens to making sure that there are no unintended consequences for anyone in my community, regardless if it's Vallejo, Fairfield, or Vacaville. We're all connected. We're all under Solano County, which is different from San Francisco. San Francisco is one city, one county. Solano County, I know there's 7 cities. Am I right? Yes.
Right.
We are all connected. So if someone is unhoused in Vallejo, where are they going to go? If someone is unhoused in Vacaville, where are they going to go? We're all on one land, where we need to make sure that we capture all of our community members. And that's through a racial equity lens.
Okay. I think we have one more comment, and then we will close up for today. Natalie Hannigan says she's so sorry that she missed it, but she is looking forward to the replay. Housing is an essential right. And thank you, ladies, for what you're doing. But I will say, Cassandra, thank you for what you're doing.
No, thank you. And I want to say Natalie is my emerge sister. So we're in this together. But no, thank you for providing this, for providing the platform and the stage just to have this conversation and getting the information out there. We, again, need to all work together and make sure that we do it through these lenses and holding everyone accountable to it.
Got it. Doris, our city councilwoman Doris Panduro, she says that the city of Fairfield general plan is being updated, and she's going to put her racial equity lens on. By the way, Doris has been inviting the community, just us folks in the community, to the general plan meetings, and I think that is really amazing. My good friend, Gian Rice, she says that is a wonderful presentation. Gian is an amazing advocate for so many social injustices and oh, here's your emerge sister.
Tell my emerge sister, we got it out.
Soon to be mine. Soon to be mine. You got some more classes to go to, you two, young folk, and so that you can go ahead and graduate from emerge, and we need to do something together. We need to do something. So this has been amazing.
No, this has, and it went by. So you were right. It did go by fast.
It feels like 15 minutes, but it's been a whole hour. We're at the top of the hour.
Oh, wow. I know. I was like, oh, this is going to go by. But this has been fun. And again, thank you for allowing me on your stage to share this information and to have this conversation. Because again, it's going to be ongoing conversations like this to make sure that we're, 1, normalizing talking about race. It's not taboo. 2, that we are inclusive for everyone, and that we do whatever that we may do through a racial equity lens in the best way that we can.
You know what I've and then I'm going to let you go, but I just had a thought. I walk into spaces, and I used to, when I was running for office, I would go to all these different meetings. And at first I was quiet. And then I just would raise my hands and say, why is this room just white? Why am I the only Black person here, or one of two brown people here? Like, what's happening right now? Do a better job at outreach. But the truth is, we can do that even in a virtual space. In a virtual space, this is weird. You're not outreaching correctly, and I just feel like you just gave us permission to look around and say, this is strange.
Yeah, and it's okay to say that. And we need to be mindful of the fact of why we're not in the room. A lot of folks in our communities are time poor. And when I say time poor, meaning that they don't have the necessary time to sit in a meeting to talk about zoning, because what is the direct impact on my community? Like, I'm too busy trying to live, survive. Exactly. So why should I have the time?
Because I'm a small business owner and I got to work 3 times as hard to get a contract.
Exactly. So exactly.
This wasn't about me. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, because we do. Because that's something I've always heard growing up. My family is from the South, Mississippi. So whenever they will tell me you have to work 4 times as hard because you're a woman and you're Black. So that's been the mentality. I have to work 4 times as hard, but how am I going to be able to work 4 times as hard, make sure that I talk to my boys about the police, making sure that my partner comes home safe, making sure that I have enough food on the table, and then still make it to a meeting? So we need to be better at making sure that these things are equitable, so we can go to those meetings and sit down and say, I don't know what jargon that you're using, but I know that this is messed up and I don't like that.
You just told us that we're time poor. That is the perfect description.
And I do want to mention that the information, the resources provided is also available in Spanish.
Wait, what information?
The resources that
resources?
They're also available in Spanish, and they do have translators.
Yeah, we need Tagalog too.
Yeah. I know, because I know in San Francisco we do have our base of language that we focus on, which is Spanish, Tagalog or Filipino, and then Mandarin, Cantonese. So we make sure that all documents are de nada to Natalie. So we make sure that all documents are available in those languages. But from what I found out, that from the paperwork that I've seen in the resources, that they are available in Spanish as well.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm not gonna hold you up any longer. I just got all worked up. I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. I could be here with you all day.
Okay, I'm gonna have to take you up on it. I feel like we need like a conference, and we just do a full day's conference, and people are coming and going and dropping information and knowledge on us. So that's in my head. I just don't know how to quite pull it off. But
and we also have a sign the person that does American Sign Language too, because we forget we have all these communities that we don't, and that's my privilege. My privilege is my first language is English, and that I can hear, and I'm not living with a disability. So it's often easy for me to forget that we have, our community is so diverse that we need to make sure that we include all in our community. So if we do this platform where we can have Doris and Natalie and some of our folks who may speak Tagalog and American Sign Language, so that way we all are getting the same information. Right.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I'm in my privilege too. Okay. Need to course correct. All right. With that, I'm going to put you in the green room for just a moment.
So I'll close out the outro. Because I'm dancing in the green room because your outro is bomb.
Oh, I love it. It's not old yet. Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm going to put you in the green room.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Another awesome show with Cassandra James. And later today, if you're around at 2, we're going to have Senator Bill Dodd for an edition. You know, you're special when you can just, I was 2:00. I was busy doing other things. That man said he's coming on at 2. And I said, well, I guess I'll be here. So Senator Bill Dodd is going to be here at 2. He is going to be bringing us latest and greatest information from a senator's perspective, senator's lens. There's a lot of things that he's working on, and we get to hear all of it at 2. But for now, thank you, Cassandra. That was wonderful, wonderful information. And this was Turning Point with me, Patrice Williams. Hold on for the outro.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Turning Point with Patrice Williams.
Something better is always possible if you're willing to work for it and fight for it.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. And never miss a podcast or live stream by visiting our website, imkpatrice.com, or connecting through social media at IamKPatrice on all platforms.